Today the biggest news comes from the Pokrovsk direction. Here, Ukrainian forces are closing the gap around the remaining Russian forces in their Dobropillia salient. As Ukrainians finish off pockets of Russian resistance, the Russians' only hope is to surrender to the advancing Ukrainian army or be annihilated completely. After conducting a successful penetration from the high ground in the west, Ukrainians are now launching their attacks from the north as well, completing the pincer around the Russian Dobropillia salient. Ukrainians are using highly trained infantry squads to move in, engaging with Russian forces along the way. The main advantage of the Ukrainians here is their far superior ground lines of communication, enjoying a direct supply line from Kramatorsk and Druzhivka, functioning as central operating hubs for Ukrainian forces in northern Donetsk. Additionally, if we take a look at the topographic map, we can see that as the Ukrainian supply lines approach the front, they cross through several settlements in the valley between two hills. This blocks signals for Russian drones, who mainly rely on FPV-type kamikaze drones instead of munitions dropped from drones. Russian fiber optics also still only makes up approximately 20% of FPVs used by the Russians, so the valley Ukrainians move through is largely protected against most Russian strikes. The buildings in the settlements and tree lines running along them offer additional concealment factors to Ukrainian infantry units passing through. The last major Ukrainian advantage is their extensive utilization of heavy drones like the Heavy Vampire and Baba Yaga variants. Because these drones drop heavy explosives or a series of smaller mortar rounds from a height, they are able to fly and hover above the valley, unaffected by the weaker signal strength that Russians suffer from lower to the ground. Geolocated footage shows how Ukrainian infantry squads move south through the settlements, under the watchful eye and in constant communication with Mavic reconnaissance drones that detect any Russian presence. The Ukrainian squad initially engaged the position with grenade launchers using high explosive rounds. However, the rounds were not penetrating into the basement where some of the Russians were hiding, so to save manpower, ammunition and time, a Vampire hexacopter drone was called in. The drone then dropped 4 mortar rounds directly on the basement, wiping out the structure and scoring several direct hits into the underground structure itself. Russian infantry attempting to flank Ukrainian attacks from the high ground to the east are also promptly intercepted by Ukrainian FPV drones patrolling the area, as signal strengths are much less disrupted on the high ground and the slopes that the Russians must move across first. In this manner, Ukrainians are systematically moving south, having already consolidated full control of Volodymyrivka and expanding the gray zone to fully encompass the Russian salient. As you remember from a previous report, Ukrainians avoided finishing off the 2 Russian encirclements further north to lure more Russian forces in to attempt to rescue them, while keeping them away from important positions. However, with the trap now sprung, there is little reason to keep these pockets alive, and the final clearing operations have begun. Ukrainian soldiers on the ground report that the western pocket has been cleared completely, as their attention is now moving to the one to the east. Every Russian is first offered surrender and to be taken as a prisoner of war. However, if they hold out and refuse, they are promptly dispatched, as Ukrainian forces are much needed elsewhere, and maintaining a tight perimeter costs a lot of resources. Overall, Ukrainians are closing the gates and finishing off any Russian soldiers who remain, as Ukrainian soldiers on the ground are already reporting that the prisoner of war exchange fund is rapidly being replenished. In the gray zone, Russian units moving through are now eliminated by drones, as Ukrainian infantry is making their way forward, leaving the fields covered in Russian bodies. The Russian Dobropillia breakthrough event is coming to a close, as many Russian generals will soon start shifting the blame to one another, as a hammer of consequences is sure to soon come from the direction of Moscow. To watch uncensored combat footage that we used in this report, check out our interactive news map. Here we're unrestricted by the YouTube policies and can finally show you the full uncut version of what really happened. But what is even more important, this map will give you access to all our significant events analysis that go far beyond of what we could include in this video. We worked in the background for almost 1 year developing this map. So for everyone who liked the map and wants to support us financially, we are also launching a 50% sale on all subscription plans. Starting from just $3.99, you will not only gain premium access to the map with even more advanced features, but you will also unlock all our exclusive strategic updates, all front overviews, and strategic geopolitics videos. If you wanted to support our efforts but haven't had the chance, now is the perfect time to jump in and make a real difference. So check out the link in the description to become an exclusive member of our community. I truly appreciate everyone who stepped up to join us. Your support means the world to us.